today we want to discuss a little bit the license of Bonsai. And yeah, so let's start with this, Dion. Tell us how is the license, and then you can take on questions from the audience, from everyone participating. Okay?
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess the more interesting question is not so much what's the license, it's why is it important to know what the license is? And I think the original question which was asked is that we promise that Bonsai will be free forever, and what that and many people don't think that's true. They think that sooner or later it will become something you have to pay for, or it won't be something that's available anymore. This kind of bait and switch strategy that's often used by many people. And the answer to that question really comes in the form of a legal answer as well as a philosophical answer. So the legal answer is the simple one, and that the IFC OpenShell codebase has two licenses on it. The library has what's known, the software programming library, that is, has what's known as a LGPL license. And the Bonsai software has a software license known as the GPL.
One
And
second,
these,
1 second. Can you please maybe share your screen and go maybe on GitHub where we have this information about Bonsai? Because I think there is a page for this, right? In the for the repository. So at least we have some place where people know that they can go and read more information about this also after the call.
yeah, so it's in the code base. So you can see on GitHub, it will show you what licenses it has found. And to clarify, there's a list over here on which library has what license. And the short answer is that apart from Bonsai, which is GPL, everything else is LGPL. So that's where you can find it. And if you want to go and read a little bit more about what LGPL and GPL is, I think the lazy version is there's a website called TLDR Legal GPL, which is kind of a short layman's explanation of what GPL is, and similarly for LGPL. And these explain the implications of the software license in very simple language.
Mhm.
So this is it's a software license, and you can see the rules of what you can do with the software, what you cannot do with the software, and what the requirements are of the software. So you can see here the first one is actually pretty interesting. You can absolutely do commercial things with Bonsai and IFC OpenShell. And you can also sell Bonsai, and you can sell IFC OpenShell. There's absolutely no problem in doing that. So you can right now go start charging other people for it. And you can also modify it. So you can take the code, you can change the Bonsai name, you can change the artwork, you can change the functionality, you can change the theme of it, and then you can distribute it. You can give it to other people, and you can make people pay you for a license to use. You can make people pay you subscriptions. You can make people pay you a fee to be able to download and install Bonsai. You're absolutely allowed to do that. I won't go through these two. These are the more interesting ones that are relevant to the question here. However, there are a couple of restrictions. The first is that you cannot sublicense it. So you don't go changing the license, basically. So if you go and redistribute Bonsai, it has to still comply with the legal requirements of the GPL license. And of course, you can't go and sue me, I guess, or sue any of the contributors of Bonsai. And now here are the restrictions of that. And this is where it becomes interesting. You have to include the original software. So if you made a bunch of changes of it, you have to include the original software. And you also have to state all of the changes that you have made to it. And you also need to go and give everybody the source code of your software. And then, of course, for legality, you have to re-include the very same license again and again and again. And it's not just sharing the source. You also need to include instructions. And this is not just how to install it. It's also how to build the software. So how do you develop using the software how do you build the source code to create the software? That way, another developer, given the source, can read these instructions, will be able to understand it, and will be able to recreate the software. And what that means is that although you are definitely able to go and sell Bonsai, because you also must provide the source code and the installation instructions, and everybody else is free to distribute it. That means if somebody purchases it from you, then that person is equally allowed to go and make some more changes, share the source code again, and redistribute it again. And if they wanted to, they could redistribute it for free. And that's also perfectly legal. And when I talk about free here, right now I'm referring to gratis. So as in $0, you don't pay for it. So yes, you can sell it, but anybody who buys it from you is legally allowed to give it away and share it to the world for free again. They don't have to, and this does happen. So for example, you have people right now selling software that is GPL licensed, for example, Blender add-ons, and they charge for it. And although anybody who buys it is allowed to go and resell it again or give it away for free, many people choose not to, based on the honor system. But then again, once a software gets large enough, you can't really rely on that honor system, and it's sort of it is a large deterrent to making money off paying for distribution, because that's really what you do when you charge for software. You're paying for this for something that's basically free. It doesn't cost that much to go and build software and put a download link up and host it online. The distribution cost of software is absolutely minimal. So when you charge for it, that as a business model starts to go away. And similarly with subscriptions, charging people a monthly rental fee for something that's completely made up is also, it goes away as a business model. You can absolutely still charge for auxiliary things. So you might charge for services around it. But the original question of will Bonsai one day suddenly become a paid product is basically not going to happen. And these things really do not happen. So how's that for a first pass? There's a lot more to it, but I thought I'd stop talking there.
Yeah, sure. Nicola, do you have any questions so far? Would you like to ask Dion anything?
Yes, hi Dion. Hope you're fine. Yes, I have a question. Who has the intellectual property over the software?
Yeah, so let me just start this by saying that I am not a lawyer. So I may make mistakes on this. This is to my best knowledge. And obviously this is not legal advice, but I'll try my best. So some open source software, what happens, or not just open source software, but some software, when you contribute code to that software, there is some sort of agreement you sign that says that the source code now becomes property of a body. So I believe, I'm not sure if Blender does this, I have to check. But there is some sort of agreement that you'd sign where you no longer become the owner of that source code. Bonsai and IFC OpenShell does not have this agreement in place. So that means that if you wrote the code, then you had the right. And so that means that if anybody wanted to change the license of Bonsai, if we suddenly wanted to change it from an open source license and relicense it under a more restrictive commercial license, we would have to message everybody who has ever written code for IFC OpenShell and Bonsai, and they would all need to collectively agree that it can be relicensed. And that is over 200 people right now. So that is it's probably not going to happen. I don't even know how to contact those 200 people.
Yeah, I get it. But so as I understood, at the moment, you can download the software for free, and then you can use it. You can change it, add your own part of the code to it, so to say. But in the future, it could be possible that you can download it only if you pay the price for the download, and then you have the license pretty much forever. Is that so? I understood like that.
Correct. Your understanding is absolutely correct. In the future, somebody could definitely, or for example, I could say that nobody is allowed to download Bonsai from my website. Sorry, we are being accompanied here today by my almost 3-year-old son. So you might hear some
It's okay, don't worry.
commentary. Yeah, so yes, I could definitely start charging for it like you described. However, let's say somebody bought it from me, they could then give it away for free, and everybody could get it from them instead for free rather than paying me for it, and they could get the absolutely identical version for free from somebody else. So there is very little incentive for me to charge for this kind of make-believe charge of software distribution.
Let's not even mention another thing, that everything that is available right now, everyone who has a copy on their computer, they can own that forever, even if it's not updated or right. So they can choose what they can do with that.
So
yeah, correct.
If I own the copy, or if I am one of those 200 people who were part of the coding, so when the future owner or you decide that now you need to have you need to pay for the download, can I, as one of those 200 people, also what I do? Do I get a part of money from the sum that people
No,
are buying, or how does it work? Because
no, you don't. Anybody can, because you're charging for the distribution of the software. You're not actually charging for any sort of rights to the code. So yeah, you can, right now, you can take Bonsai and you can sell it, and nobody else will make money from it apart from you.
Let's not give too many ideas.
Somebody should try it, and then and then they'll find out pretty quickly that it doesn't work.
So I have also one question. When you, for example, when you provide support to the software, for example, I'm using your software, for example, and have problems using it. Something is broken, there is a bug, whatever. I need some kind of a support from some smart people. Could you then charge those services in terms of, okay, Bonsai is free to download, but this support system costs 100 euros, 1,000 euros, or X amount of dollars per month?
Absolutely. So you can, because it's a totally separate conversation. You can charge for any service, not just support. It's a totally irrelevant thing to software. So you can make it terms of, that's a good way to make money, actually. You can say, I will only give you support if you have my particular version of the software. You can definitely say that, and then you can charge twice, one for distributing your special version with like maybe a tiny little change somewhere to mark it as your own, and then you charge people a support contract. But then anybody else can equally well do that, nobody is stopping them as well.
Great, thanks. So how do you see like the future business model of Bonsai, maybe like in 10 years? It's a wide question.
Yeah. So this is obviously quite a loaded question, and because it is so far away, and it is a very complicated topic. But there are some bits of some good things I think I should aspire to. And the first is, I heard a talk by Mustafa, who is the guy behind Ladybug Tools, and he gave what I think is very good advice. And he says that if you want to commercialize something to do with open source, you have to keep it separate from the open source software, as separate as possible. So, for example, Ladybug is completely free, but Mustafa does charge for Pollination Cloud, which is their cloud-based orchestration system for doing sustainability analysis. And that is a very good separation of concerns. So I guess that's something we should try to aspire to in the long term. And I guess that the second thing to be aware of is that I think the way the commerciality of open source works is a little bit different to the traditional software vendor approach. So the traditional software vendor approach is that I am a company that builds software, and I create commercial value through distributing and supporting that software. However, for open source, I think there is still commercial value, but not as a vendor. The software creates commercial value through the users. So, for example, right now, I believe that the people who use Bonsai have created a lot of commercial value for themselves, not for this kind of vendor, but for themselves. And
I'm a good example of that, by the way.
yeah, that is one example. Yeah, and I think that's the nature of open source software. That open source software is about giving this kind of power to the users of the software, rather than the vendor of the software. It's a redistribution. So similarly, the commercialization of it is redistributed. So it makes the users earn more rather than the distributors earn more. And that comes with a downside too. It means that very often the distributors are very strapped for resources, right? They're resource constrained to go and develop the software. But maybe that's as long as it's enough to keep the software going, maybe that's a very, very good trade-off, because where would I rather see money going into? Software developers or making a better built environment? And the answer for such really fundamental technology in our industry is the built environment, of course, in my opinion. It's not a software vendor. If all our money went to people who sold pencil lead for drafting, it's rather than good engineers and architects, it would be a very bad distribution of money, I would say. So I kind of weaseled my way out of answering that question, but hopefully it was a good weasel. So
Yeah, no. So I think the future also how Bonsai, at least until some other business model might be implemented or arise, it will still be powered by donations. Like there are already what is the monthly budget, Ian? It's getting closer to $3,000, isn't it?
yeah, that's right. So
Yeah.
you can see our finances completely public, either on the Bonsai website or the ISC Open Show website. And on this top right corner, you can see how much we currently make per month in US dollars. And if you click on that, it will bring you to our funding page, which will show you our financial goals. So where, if you do contribute to that, where that money is being spent. And right now, long story short, it's being spent to write code, build features, fix bugs, write code.
Yeah.
Yeah, and every income transaction is completely open and transparent for everybody to see.
Yeah, tell me one thing, like in that $2,700 a month, is included also one-time donations or only the monthly recurring?
That also includes one-time donations, but I
Okay.
believe the calculation is some sort of moving average.
For a
I'm
year.
not
Yeah, so they make it for the whole year. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I have three questions.
Go on.
How many users or licenses in Bonsai there are? Is that like data that is official, public?
I don't think anybody knows, and it will stay that way.
Okay.
We don't keep track of any sort of. I mean, if you install it, there's no way we will know or not know. We do have some statistics, so we do keep GitHub. If you download it from GitHub, GitHub keeps statistics on how many downloads were made, and also if you download it from the
Blender
extension, yeah, there are also numbers over there. And so
What
if you click on
about,
that, you can.
sorry, what about from inside Blender? If you install it from Blender UI, do you also get a count here?
If it ends up downloading from the official extensions, yes, it contributes as a count. If you are using the unstable version, then no, it does not contribute to a count. So I guess just using that number,
Okay.
right? If we have, let's see, what's it, 33, that divided by 5, okay. So we've got 80,000 stable downloads per year, roughly, give or take. And that's stable. I would say a lot of people do use the unstable. And that's also excluding people who get it from other channels, which we don't know, internal company rollouts. Yeah, so at least 80,000, I guess, is very conservatively, at least 100,000 a year.
Yeah, I'm sure there are more than 100,000 a year downloads.
Yeah, that's pretty a safe bet. I just don't know the actual number.
But let me tell you something else. What's happening like when you are updating your version? Like, does that count as a new download? Because I think
Yes,
so,
that would
right?
count as but this is a stable, so the stable would only
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
But then again, one person might install it on 3 machines, so it'd be counted 3 times.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a download count. So we don't track individuals, obviously, but
It's
we
not
do
really a
have.
focus. Yeah.
Yeah, and it will never be a focus. That's not the point of software, to track you. Although there is a web page on here where you could collectively, let's see here. If you wanted to, you could volunteer your name or your company to say that you do use IFC OpenShell in some way. So if you go to the wiki, there is a section here on software that's powered by IFC OpenShell. So by the way, these are the Bonsai download numbers. They're not the IFC OpenShell download numbers. That one is even harder to tell because many people use it indirectly. So one possible source, if you are interested, is PyPy. And we can see here has been, I don't even know. Is there a stat somewhere here?
I think maybe before you open it.
Release history, download files. Oh, I thought there were stats somewhere over here. Okay, maybe I was wrong. I thought there might have been. But we are used indirectly in a lot of other software. So, if FreeCAD itself has a huge following and that installs IFC OpenShell, that multiplies the number of users significantly. And then there's a whole bunch of proprietary products, which of course we have no way of telling. And then it's used, of course, in a lot of academia. And then here are the companies that have volunteered their own names, and you can see the company size there as a sort of indication. Yeah. Some of these still need updating. Some of these are missing a sector to describe what they are. So I guess that's a kind of a ballpark.
Yeah.
And then, of course, other distribution channels. So any Linux distribution channels as well.
WSP is also there. I see.
Australia. You have to add Germany.
Let me ask you one more question. So, is there in the future maybe the idea of people investing in Bonsai to get to be partial owners, so to say, of Bonsai? Like if you invest 5,000 euros, you get I don't know how many shares. of Bonsai to be a part owner, so to say?
Well, right now there's nothing to own, so
Okay.
that question doesn't make any sense right now. Um, if you're talking about shares and ownership, if there was a legal entity in the future, and that legal entity, did sell shares, I guess possibly privately, that it's always a possibility. And anybody can go and set up. You could right now start up your own commercial company. You can't call it Bonsai. That wouldn't make sense, but you call it something else and then base all your services around providing services for Bonsai and IFC Open Shell. And then you could, just like any other company, support company, private services company. Sorry, just a moment. My son's a bit thirsty. But yeah, I mean,
Sure.
that's a pretty generic question.
Yeah. Anyone else has any other questions before Nicola rolls up the next ones? Let's see. I think I saw someone wrote something. But guys, come on, don't be shy, okay? Just jump in and ask some questions. Come on, you are not just listening, right? I'm sure you
Or
have
I
some
can
questions.
ask another question.
Oleg, do you want to ask something? Yeah, you can note it, Nicola, so you're sure you don't forget it, and you can ask if trying to give the chance to somebody else if they have it.
I'm actually have no questions. It's totally fine for me. Blender is free. It's an amazing tool. What questions should I have? I mean, it's good for me. That's it.
Yeah, maybe Nicola can tell you why he has these doubts and these questions. Like, what is the reasoning behind? Like, what does he want to do, or is he trying to hijack bonsai?
No, what I'm trying is to find out how to or that was actually my next question. What is the plan how to make Bonsai scalable in terms of Autodesk has millions, Revit has millions of users. I see the potential of Bonsai having in 10 years also million of users. So if you have this, how to make this scalable, and comparison, if you have 80,000 users downloads per year, and if you have million downloads per year in 10 years, that is like huge difference.
Yeah,
Um,
that is
so my
promoting it.
concerns when it comes to the, for example, if it comes to the million downloads, it may gonna need some other business model. It may not be free. There could be some extra charges like support and extra services, or download could also cost some money. So when I'm thinking about, okay, now I implement Bonsai in my company, I know I'm really good in my company and I have the license. 5 people also, I teach them, they have the licenses free. And then our company then starts developing, and also Bonsai switch, for example, to some kind of freemium model where you have to buy the license, the first download, so to say, and you have to, for example, to pay for some extra services like support services. Then just like to figure out how it's going to be that in the future.
Actually, this is a good hint that you mentioned right there. Let's ask Dion about that when he comes back. If it's actually
I'm here.
possible. Hey, so what about possibility of actually changing the license? Is it even possible, like to change the license so that, let's say, I understand the other options are not very likely to happen because there are many challenges and there is always somebody who can share it again. But what about changing the license model? Is that a possibility?
I think we asked that question already, and the answer is that you need to contact over 200 people to go and agree on it. So it's not going to happen.
Okay. Okay, so you need that if you want to change, like everyone who contributed. Okay, so we have to get even more contributors, right? Because theoretically, let's say like a company, a large company with a lot of money could go after 200 people and pay them 100,000 euros or something like that, or 10,000 euros to sign something. That's possible, Dian. For you,
Well, I
maybe
don't
not.
even know how to contact some of those people.
Yeah, well, there's
So
if it's a
Also,
digital
just to find
trace,
out.
if it's a digital trace, that's going to happen. It's not like if they did not, if no one died, God forbid. So I think 200 people are not so difficult to find if they are
yeah, I
online.
mean, technically, you don't actually need 200 people. You just need however many people, and then look, this is all just theoretical here. In theory, I suppose you could get all of the code written by the remaining 100, let's say, or remaining 50 or whatever that you don't want to find, and then you just delete their code and rewrite their code.
Oh my God.
And
Come
somehow,
on, don't give Autodesk hints, man. Come on. And can you share your screen or something? Because I see myself double, and I
oh,
will.
sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Nicola, what was the other question?
So what is stopping, for example, other companies to take the code, rewrite it a little bit, change it, and then sell it?
Nothing. In fact, they
Nothing.
don't even need to. They don't even need to rewrite anything or change anything. They can just sell it. And in fact, somebody has already tried to do that. So they took Bonsai and they put it on. I forget which website they put it on, and were selling it as their own add-on, and it didn't last very long. So, I'm
What is the sauce then?
The thing
this is a funny. Yeah.
Yeah, the one important thing that is happening here, and right now maybe that could be overshadowed, although I don't really think, is that if you do that and you try to develop bonsai on your own, you're like bonsai is going to keep growing by being developed by the existing team, including Dion, including Thomas Kreinen and Andre and everyone else, right? So if you go a different way like Dion, would this be possible, like to develop completely separated in a close way, and then to always combine with what's happening with how bonsai is progressing without
Yeah, absolutely. So you
like
can absolutely keep on taking it, and whenever we make any changes,
yeah,
you,
okay.
you take it and then add your little change on top, and
Not
then
good.
resell it on top.
Let's forget
Uh,
about this. Don't say more about this. Let's not give even more people ideas.
no,
Let's
I
just
think
encourage people to promote them. Okay, guys, promote this to universities, to everyone. Okay, we have to promote this tool to be used by as many as possible people.
like this isn't a problem. Like this is a feature. Like this is not something to hide or shy away from. This is the freedom that you get as a user.
Yeah.
And it's a very powerful freedom. And don't forget that there's a lot of software out there that already have these rules around it. And in fact, there's a lot of software which actually have even less less restrictive licenses than Bonsai. So just to give you an idea, IC OpenShell and Bonsai have two different licenses, right? IC OpenShell is LGPL, Bonsai is GPL, and the major difference between them is that the GPL license has to stay GPL. Like it is any time you change it, it still needs to be GPL. Whereas the LGPL license still needs to become still has to comply with LGPL, but you can combine it with a completely proprietary system, and you don't need to give out that completely proprietary system, depending on how you do this combination of works. So,
the lady that with the babies, she.
Sorry, somebody talking? Somebody's on mute. Yeah, so what I'm saying is that you can, there are even more free, like even more less restrictive licenses out there that you can totally combine proprietary, commercial, locked-in systems with it, no problem. And there's so much precedent for this, and it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen because it doesn't work. What you're describing, like people trying to cheat the system way you're describing, it doesn't work. It's not worth it. People do have very productive business models on top of free software, but only when it's truly productive and adding value. Like for example, I think the two big ones for Linux are Novell and Red Hat, right? They take Linux, which is completely free, and they go and tweak it a little bit, create their own distribution, and they sell services on top. And they are incredibly successful because, as you say, when it gets to a certain level, one of the services people do need is enterprise support. So that's why things like Red Hat Enterprise Linux exists. And that's a good thing that it is allowed to exist.
Yeah. Dimitrios, you have a question. Go ahead.
Hi, hello everyone, and thank you. I have a question with respect to the services mentioned before, the support services mentioned before by Dion. And what I would like to ask is the following. Could we talk about a little bit theoretical, what would be the case and the cost implemented for a full-time support in a use case where an institution, whether that's educational one or could be the state, that wants to use the tool in order to validate files that are submitted in their system or other type of workflows. Could we talk a little bit theoretical? What would be the cost for such a service if it would be adopted and integrated by a legal entity?
I don't really know how to answer that question.
I will try to give an example. Basically, what we're talking here in a local chapter in Romania, where I'm residing, is we're looking at how to use Bonsai in educational institutions, and maybe also be a part of the curricula in a master that is implemented. The case is, though, that a lot of changes are happening all the time within the Bonsai environment, and that limits a little bit, let's say, not the stability. I would say that if someone needs a support, you cannot have an access immediately, as is the case in other models of business systems. That could also be expanded in the case where we need a platform where we need to validate 5Cs and for a digital building permit, let's say, application, and we want to use that tool. But at the same time, there must be support available like 24/7 in that case. So, considering those as points, could we discuss about ballpark of costs for that type of support?
Yeah, so let me help narrow it down. I mean, it's still a difficult question. I'm not entirely sure how to answer, but I can help narrow it down. So I guess the first question is what type of support? The first is if you have a problem with the software and you, like the software actually doesn't work, or there's a bug with it, or it needs to do feature A and feature A doesn't exist. That type of support. Now, the current, like, regardless of whether of what you're an individual or a massive international company, the current channel is to submit a technical ticket, basically an online ticketing system, and you can see that here. If you go to the GitHub, you can go to the issues page, and there are. Let's just see here. Oh, that's right, there are. There's currently 886 open tickets, of which a few were added about 2 hours ago. 1, 2, 3, 4. And in total, there's been about 6,000 of these to date. And this is, I guess, some form of support, right? Somebody has a problem, they report the issue, there's a crash or an error or something, and then a developer looks at it and it gets fixed sooner or later. So the question is, what's the time frame? So this costs nothing to create a ticket, right? Anybody can do this. The time frame is, the time scale is at the 24/7 type of scale. So if we take a look at closed, you can see closed 5 hours, 17 yesterday, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, 3. You know, it's I don't think I've sorted this by last close, so this is probably not quite correct. But this is a 24/7 ordeal. People do look at this 24/7 across different time zones. And I can say that our open-close ratio is roughly around 83%. So what that means is that if you submit any sort of issue on here, I mean, obviously not some nonsensical thing, but something that is a legitimate problem, there's an 83% chance that your issue will get resolved. And I don't mean like resolved 5 years later, but I mean,
yeah, this is the next. What would be the interval between the opening and the closing of the ticket? A medium, let's say.
Depends on the complexity. I think complexity has
Of
also a
course,
lot to do.
that's why I'm mentioning a medium. What was up until now, let's say, as a statistic.
Yeah, I don't have that time offhand, but I can. I may have some numbers which I can show here. So here's our issue growth. This is a bit out of date, and you can see our issues are growing, even though we're closing. There is still that 17% of issues which still grow. And you can see here we get, last year we had 1,600 new issues, and 1,600 new issues. And I think somewhere over here we have closed. So if you take a look at the difference here, I mean, this is just ballparking. You know, that much was closed within the year. So it's, yeah, it's if that gives you some sort of indication. I mean, we can probably do some interesting stats and work out the actual, you know, average close time. But yeah, I would say that it's pretty good, I would have to say. And we don't forget the old ones either. The old ones are revisited. So they do get closed out eventually when it does make sense.
I think this is this left, so the bottom left diagram, it's really good. It can really show you actually the amount of users or the increase of amount of users in BIM. I think it's a really good indicator of how many new users you have.
Yeah, definitely.
2015 to now, I think.
Users could be much more. These
yes,
are
but
effectively people.
I'm not speaking 6,000 users or 5,000 users, but the people who actually work a lot with Bonsai there is high probability they are gonna write some issues. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't mean that there are 6,000 users, but the line, the curve that is like going up, is the indicator of how many new users per year there are.
Well, it's going exponentially to infinite, as I see.
Well, hopefully, yeah.
That's the curse of any successful open source project, I think. I think that's what will happen. They will get bugs beyond bugs, and
I was referring to the users, actually.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, you get both. they'll correlate until you get to the state where I guess sometimes there's software where you feel as though there's no connection to the developers, and that's the absolute worst scenario. You never want to be in that case. Like, for example, if Microsoft Word crashed, you probably just would say tough luck, and that's it, because you feel there's this huge disconnect between you and the developers of Microsoft Word. Like this, you're just one among so many. And that's also a curse of being such a successful software. And then sometimes there is still a connection, but the connection is so poor that you feel as though there's this black hole of support. You know, there's a ticket, and then no matter how many enterprise agreements, I like no matter what type of support there is, you feel as though it's not actually going to get solved. And this, that's also something you want to avoid. And I guess the question is, how do you scale it in a way that users still feel they have a close connection with the devs? And I think Blender has some fascinating statistics on that, and I feel as though they've scaled it really well, because I have reported bugs to Blender upstream as well, and I feel as though each bug report has been looked at in a very, very tight, like within 24 hours, there's almost certainly a response, and they do get closed and fixed, like proper closed, not just, oh, we won't fix this, but like actual resolutions in a very timely manner. And Blender's pretty huge. And look, this is not specific to open source. This is all growth of all software. You know, every company or collective or community developing software faces this issue of how do you scale in a way that balances number of users versus number of developers versus number of bugs, the problems, versus and stability, and versus number of features versus amount of auxiliary marketing and training and documentation and things like that. So all that needs to scale together in a balance, and striking that balance is a challenge for everybody to try to achieve. Yeah, and we're no different, and hopefully we do manage to strike that balance.
Okay.
May I?
Yes, go ahead, Oleg.
I think I have a hypothetical question, but first of all, Dion, thank you so much for what you're doing and for all the developers. This is related to my question. So let's say we're in this golden age of bonsai support and development, but God forbid, of course, theoretically, like people are not infinite. Like we running out of life, we're ending. And what will happen if for some reason, like all of a sudden, lots of like a core developers team get out of this? Like, what's gonna happen? Like, hypothetically, if in 50 years, or let's say an X amount of years, the developers will not be able to dedicate that much time to this. Who's going to take care of this beautiful product?
Yeah, I think what you're describing is a well-known issue in open source. At least I call it the bus factor problem, right? If somebody gets hit over by a bus, how many people need to get hit over before the project dies? Sorry, maybe that was a bit ominous.
Dramatic.
But yeah, I mean, maybe that's a thing. Maybe let's see. Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, it's a real thing. So, lottery factor, truck factor, circus factor. Okay. So, and this is kind of both the strength. This is really the strength of open source software, because when it's a closed software and the company dissolves, the product dies. It's gone. Like there's no, that's it. It's gone. Whereas when an open source software dissolves, as in the people developing it dissolve, it doesn't disappear. It gets put into hibernation. And depending on the nature, on the duration and the nature of the hibernation, it can get resurrected. So that is always a good thing. And I also like to remind people that sometimes you get this beautiful state of software, which does happen once in a while, where nothing changes very much, but that's because there is nothing to change. Like it does its job, it works. And maybe when you think of software as this big do-it-all everything software, that is, you know, it's a never-ending goal. But if you think of software as building a little tool that does one thing, and when it does that thing very well, then that's it. You don't need to tweak that tool anymore. It just does its job. And if you need to do a new thing, you don't change the old tool, you build another little new tool, and then you connect to the old tool. And this is sometimes known as part of the Unix philosophy, where you build lots of little software that does each doing one thing very well. And that is another good way to protect against this type of issue, because you have lots of little highly stable utilities that you spread your risk over lots of tiny little tools.
Like index.
Now, that said, we are probably not quite a set of Unix utilities, not quite there. There's some similarities, but not quite. You will notice the big umbrella of tools here. Like, you might describe some of these as being a little bit more Unix-like. Like IFC CSV is pretty, I mean, it's pretty little and cute. IFC FM, I would say, is pretty cute as well. Patch is very cute. IFC Tester is pretty cute. Like, some of these are really tiny, cute things that really don't need much. They change at a very different pace to other things. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the bus factor of Bonsai, and this is the million-dollar question, that I think you can take a look at the contributors. So we start off with the lone wolf, of course, Thomas Kreinen, who started it all. And then you can see this sort of growth of contributors. And this is the number of unique people who have contributed in that particular year. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, the interesting thing is that, of course, if 118 people contribute, even if one person changes one line of code and that's it, they still get counted as a contributor. And this is kind of, I guess you might call it drive-by contributing. Kind of like if you go to Wikipedia and you just edit one little typo on a page, you've still contributed to Wikipedia. Yeah. But you're not one of the core contributors, so you're not one of those that the bus factor would play a role to. So I have this other graph called the core contributors, and this is just arbitrary, based off just saying that if you do more than 10 commits, you're probably doing something of significance. Like, it really does impact somebody. You're probably not, maybe not core, but you're doing good work. You're not doing a drive-by. And the reason I do this is because there's something known as the long tail distribution of contributors in open source software, right? You have this small fraction of people doing the majority of the work, and then it drops off very, very quickly in all these communal works. So these are I guess, our more significant contributors with which the number is growing. And then the one which is, I guess, financially core, in that they do this because they are financially sustainable to do this. That comes from our monthly funding and also shadow funding. So, for example, Thomas Kreinen would be part of the stable core because, he, as part of his consulting job, he is financially supported. Isn't that right? Isn't that right? Yes, it's right. It's right. Yeah, so, I mean, although I do this in my part-time, it's I'm also sort of shadow funded because I apply it a lot in my work. And so there's a lot of, through experience using it in my work, that I find issues. There's a large element of support over there. And Andre is paid full-time as well. And now Bruno Perdigao is also being paid in increasing amounts. So I guess what I'm saying is that is my top priority personally for this, for any sponsorship, is to grow this core team, to ensure the security of this financial security or sustainability of this core team.
I could add something to that, and I would say that, look, if something happens with all the developers and they disappear, there are still people. If people need this tool and rely on it, and there is no alternative, people will learn how to code and how to contribute, and it will keep going. Okay, that's what's happening. If it's needed, if it's not needed, of course it's going to die. But yeah, so I don't think, I don't know how Bonsai is going to look in 2050, but I'm sure that is going to keep growing, and the larger the team of developers becomes, the stronger and the quicker it's going to grow, and more robust product is going to be. And right now, like on the payroll, it's 1.5 developers. Is that right, Dion, or something like that?
Yeah, something
Yeah,
like that,
yeah.
correct.
So imagine you see how it grows. You already see how the contribution and if you go back to the issue fixed and so on chart that you have, the one with it was here, the issues closed and open. Yeah. Can you imagine like when are going to be like 5? And this is what are we talking about? What was the yearly budget? Is like close to 30,000 euros, dollars or something like that, right? So imagine uh, getting to 100,000, that will triple this output. Imagine. And this is not a like this is a small amount of money. Like this is like from the entire world, from the entire AEC industry, it's nothing. It's peanuts. That's the thing. If more people are realizing this and throwing a bit more and so on, so they will make a huge difference. That's the thing, right? But meanwhile, yeah, but that's how it starts. It starts with geeks that are trying the tool and then spread it like a virus, because that's how it works. Yeah, I think we should wrap it up because we are already 1 hour, over 1 hour mark.
Can I have one question, 15 seconds and 30 seconds answer?
Okay, go.
It's a bit technical, but also have a thing about license. If I'm working, for example, in an office with a colleague on the same project, and second, if I'm working, for example, in Germany and Petru is working in Norway and we are working on the same project, does Bonsai and Blender offer cloud version or where the model is stored?
IFC Git. Dion, go on. I think IFC Git is the only way to collaborate at the same time.
There are multiple prototypical ways to do simultaneous authoring collaboratively on IFC. I would say the most mature and integrated way right now is IFC Git. And that is a distributed cloud system. So you can run it on any server, not locked into any cloud vendor at all, or host your own, or you could use GitHub, use GitLab, or Forgeo, or whatever you want. And yeah, you could go and edit your models and merge them over there.
Okay, this could be very interesting for me. Okay, thank you. I have no more questions.
Okay. Dion, anything else you would like to wrap this up with? Or you just want to go to sleep?
I'll just end with one quick thing, saying that a lot of these questions are not specific to Bonsai or IFC OpenShell. They're very generic questions to do with open source projects in general. And open source, this is not new. Open source has been around for a long time. And in fact, the majority of software that was first written was all open source by default. It's actually an anomaly which spread that made software become paid. So that's actually the strange business model, not what we're talking about right now. So I guess that these problems don't have straight answers, but there's a lot of varied solutions out there and a lot of people who already have solved this in different ways. And I guess the one we're currently most closest to right now is perhaps Blender and FreeCAD in the space. And they both have very interesting methods that you can research up on and read their annual reports and see how they go about solving these issues.
Yeah, Dion, one last quick thing. I just remember now. I heard somebody said that there are some problems with Blender has some financing problems and so on. Like, would be possible that Blender could go bankrupt and the project be abandoned because it's hosted on Blender? Or like, first, this is the first question, and the second one, if it would be possible to go independent of Blender eventually to build like a separate full tool.
Look, I cannot answer anything about the Blender project or the Blender Foundation. I know nothing about their internal finances or operations. I can answer a little bit about the second one on whether it is possible to have Bonsai agnostic of Blender. And of course, technically it's possible because all the code was written to be agnostic of an interface. And in fact, in Bonsai itself, you can press a button and you can see all your BIM data on a website, as a web dashboard. side by side with Blender. And this is the cool thing with native IFC, that you can have, imagine having a website, a 3D app, a spreadsheet, and they're all very different interfaces and different software, but they all speak to the same IFC database and all edit it simultaneously. So Blender is just one of many possible interfaces that can connect to an native IFC database. So from a technical perspective, it's definitely feasible to do that. You can take IFC OpenShell right now, plug it into Revit, and then make Revit a native IFC editing tool. You could do that. I mean, and by anyone listening into this who wants to try, please do it. It'll be super cool. That said, you know, Blender is awesome. So we are standing on the shoulders of giants here. Yeah. There's really no need to reinvent the wheel sometimes.
No, I was thinking like if something happens, but even if the project itself is going to go bankrupt, there is still going, like, let's say the team becomes smaller or something like that, it's still going to exist because there are already so many actually giant companies, commercial companies using it, right? So of course, everything is possible, but yeah, it's a very small probability for that to happen in the near future.
Yeah.
Unless AI does something really crazy and renders it completely useless, replacing it with something that, it's like 10,000 times better or something like that overnight. But yeah, it will still take few years, I guess. Thank you so much, Dion. You are allowed to go to sleep now. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time and answering all these questions. And of course, thank you very much for the daily efforts that you are putting into this amazing project that is empowering a lot of cool projects. I appreciate your work and you as a human being. You are doing an amazing thing for this world.
Cool, yeah.
We stay in touch. Have a nice evening, you, and a nice day, everyone else.
Thank you, Dion, also from my side, and have a great evening and weekend too.
Bye, you guys.
All right. Have a great one. Have a good
Ciao.
weekend. See you.
Thank you. Bye.